Okay, good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and start this public meeting. This is a public meeting on the Myakka River Park Master Plan. This is the very first time we have tried to do one in this format, so I hope you'll be patient with us as we kind of learn the ropes ourselves. With that in mind, it has been about 1 year since our last meeting. Obviously, we've had some things to deal with and with the pandemic, and we're glad to be able to come back to you using technology. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Ken Glander, our consultant for the project.
Hello, everyone. Hopefully everybody can hear me and see me. Again, it's our pleasure to be part of this effort, and like Mike said, it's been a year, and how quickly a year has passed. But yes, we've been dealing with some unfortunate circumstances, but we're moving forward. And so once again, I want to just review our meeting agenda for today. I'll do a little project introduction again. I want to then do a project plan and timeline review. We'll then go through a public meeting summary. This again is our third and final public meeting. Kind of discuss some of our public meeting notes and what has occurred from those meetings. Then we'll go into the final master plan, the edits that we made based on those meetings, and review the plan and the phase 1 plan, and then obviously we'll end with some questions and input from the meeting. So next slide, please.
I'm a little behind you. Sorry.
Okay, no. So just to review, again, my name is Ken Glander. I'm with RWA Engineering, and we're the primary consultant working on the project, but we have a significant partner with us in Canaan Associates, and you can see they are participating as well. We have Greg Witherspoon and Lauren Patterson. We also, as part of our team, Dex Bender did some of our initial environmental analysis. Of course, part of the team is the group with community services with Charlotte County, Mr. Mike Koenig, Tina Powell, and the director, Tommy Scott. We certainly couldn't have done this without him, and thanks, Mike, for working through this technology and getting us able to do this. And obviously, last is the Charlotte County, you all that are willing to participate in this effort. So that's a little review of our project team. So a little overview, again, I believe we're all very familiar with the park site. It is identified in red on this map. It's approximately 129 acres in size, located within the Gulf Cove neighborhood, identified on the map here. And it's, we could say strategically located within the Myakka State Forest land area and the Tippecanoe Environmental Park. So just wanted to identify where that is. So next is where we are within the project timeline and the process that we've been following. So initially, back in the spring of 2019, we did our site analysis, did some survey work. Dex Bender did our environmental assessment and our first overview of an analysis of what we've identified as part of what is going on in the park site. From there, we went in, moved us into the summertime of 2019. And from there, we did a review of the park elements that we felt would be appropriate for the site. And from that, we conducted our initial public workshop. And that occurred back in September of 2019. And that was an excellent turnout. We got a lot of great input. We'll be, Lauren and Canaan Associates will be kind of drilling down more on that further along in our presentation here. Then from there, we went to the master planning efforts, the real kind of creating the document that we've kind of able to put our hands around, developing some concepts. And that occurred back in fall of 2019. And we conducted our second public meeting. Again, got a lot of good feedback from all the participants during the meeting. And from that, unfortunately, then we had to wait all this time to now have our third public meeting. And this is to go through our final plan edits, present those, and what we'll have is what we feel has been a great process that has led us to formalizing this final master plan for the Myakka River Park. The next part of the project would be our first phase, the design of that. That is going through more of the details and the constructability, cost associated with that, and developing the final construction documents. So that is forthcoming, and we'll obviously be presenting and identifying all those aspects as we get into that design phase. A little bit about what brought us to this effort. Charlotte County has their 2015 Parks Master Plan, and within that document, it identifies particular parks, particular areas of land that they want to see developed appropriately with the proper input, proper process, just like what we're following here. And one of those is the Myakka River Park master planning effort. So again, just to repeat, we did our suitability analysis, did a site analysis, conducted our public meetings, and what also dovetails into this park process is Charlotte County is wanting to get even more input from the neighborhood, Gulf Cove neighborhood, and there's a planning effort that I believe is moving forward. It's on a little hiatus too, due to the COVID pandemic, but that is moving forward. So that has a significant dovetailing into this effort. Also, there'll be a significant amount of coordination with the public works and transportation departments with the county, and that then helps us lead to the phase one construction of the park. So from here on, we're gonna transfer over to Canaan, and I believe Lauren, you're gonna help us take us through a little bit more drill down of the public meetings and what has led us a little bit more detail on the project.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. We just want to review kind of what we had been doing throughout this process. So at the first public meeting, we brought the analysis report and we brought ideas to really get some initial feedback on what everybody in the community really wanted to see happen with Myakka Park. So based on that feedback we received, we heard that trails and really passive recreation were those top priorities. In particular, maintaining the natural character of this land and keeping just the main theme being the environmental connections was a major priority for everybody in the community. Some of the types of recreation were mostly simple passive recreation opportunities, such as overlooks, seating areas, and shade. Better connectivity, and in particular access to water, was also very important. And then some of the major concerns that we heard were the narrow roadway, traffic and accessibility for this entire park. So keeping that in mind, we really came up with a pretty simple master plan to figure out how we can get all of the accessibility concerns addressed, as well as really activate the park with just simple passive recreation. So some of the key design elements of the initial master plan were expanding that roadway and actually making that a very accessible two-way road, enhancing the entrances and creating more access points as well as really developing the system of signage to direct people to the appropriate access points and make sure that people aren't going into areas of the park that were not accessible. I think some of the other big main components here were kind of this waterfront park, multi-purpose trails, as well as a major bike trail and a passive recreation nature trail, access to water within these passive overlook areas with seating, as well as a fully accessible canoe and boardwalk type idea. We've also had on the corners really addressing those for easy parking and turnaround areas so that people will not go into the neighborhood and really be able to be directed to specific areas of this park. And then there's also even more futuristic opportunities if the resources are there for things like a ropes course and a really open lawn area. Then we have our second public meeting, and so we heard from the community that the passive recreation was their favorite opportunities for this park. They really enjoyed the trails, the riverfront access, and the ropes course. Primary concerns were about traffic capacity on the existing roadway, the location of parking, roadway access, in particular park maintenance and security, as well as sidewalk and perimeter requirements. So taking that into account, we've come back with some simple recommendations to keep the expanded roadway and make sure that drainage and some other accessibility concerns in terms of transportation would be coordinated with the county neighborhood plan, as well as during park construction with those construction documents. We also took into account all the comments received from parking. So we made the parking lots just slightly larger and removed any on-street parking or turnaround areas that we had to really bring that into the park and keep that contained within the park boundaries. We also made sure to identify that that kayak is fully accessible, so it allow for bringing your truck around to be able to bring in kayaks and paddle boats of that nature, as well as having soft launch areas and beach lawns as well. And then also identifying that a maintenance plan, especially for the environmental aspects, would be needed in conjunction with the construction documents. So I'm going to hand it over to Greg here, and he's going to kind of dive into some of the details of these different elements.
Thanks, Lauren. So here's one of the most important aspects. This is how we responded to the comments and the concerns of the community associated with the roadway condition. If you look at the upper top left, this is the existing condition where we've got the park on the left, we've got a 10-foot driving lane, pardon me, and then we've got additional right-of-way and drainage ditch on the other side. Our initial proposal, we were planning on having some additional parking and some breakout spaces, really kind of a softscape gravel area adjacent to the expanded roadway. And then if you look at the final proposed section, and this is the section for both the south side and the west side of the park, we're planning on working with Public Works and with transportation to, eventually have that additional 10-foot added drive lane, which is actually going to be on park property. And I think that's a pretty important aspect that speaks to why we want to coordinate and work with all of the good folks at Charlotte County. And then we just maintain a native buffer, so there won't be any additional parking along the roadways. Design program wise, we really want to address this opportunity to reach out to the river in a really nice way. We're anticipating a lot of native vegetation. We definitely will have some hardscape walks that are wide enough for both maintenance vehicles as well as a lot of pedestrian traffic. We do want to open up the vista a little bit. So in the one spot that we've chosen in the master plan, there's already a cleared area, and that's a main reason why we've chosen to use that spot. And then in terms of the more passive elements, in terms of play, maybe we can incorporate some more natural play elements in the future. And then in terms of the trail, there's multiple opportunities to have boardwalks and natural surface trails, even some hardscape trails and things of that nature. On the upper left there, you can see what we're thinking about for a fully accessible, kind of modern paddle boat ramp, if you will, whether it's a kayak or a canoe. And that's the type of thing that we'd be looking forward to working with you to finalize in the future with the phase 1 plans. We definitely want to bring in a shade element. This is just an idea. We don't have that designed, although we've seen some other shade elements throughout Charlotte County that we probably pull from that design vernacular and work within the program there. And then on the bottom right, we have an opportunity to work with some of the local bike organizations to really utilize and harness their volunteer power to help us build some what could be some really exciting bike trails and new bike recreation opportunities in the future. So this is what we have for the preliminary phase 1 plan. On the bottom there, on the south side of the park, we want to prioritize the entryways. We want to make sure that we have good signage and start to direct people right off the bat when they start to address the Myakka River Park of where they should go. We do want to have an initial parking lot, a gravel parking lot, sized appropriately with some entry signage again and some site furniture there. A minor amount of landscaping, although we do want to continue to have a nice native buffer along the edge. And then in the first phase, we're proposing connecting the initial paved wayfinding signage on the left to the parking lot with a paved trail. And that would be a 10-foot multi-purpose trail. And then on the right, we would have a soft surface nature trail that would wind throughout the existing vegetation. There's really some nice stands of native vegetation in there, along with some stuff that's a little bit non-native, if you will, but it's still going to be a pleasant experience. And this is where we would carve out some areas, as Lauren was mentioning, for overlooks and river access. Again, just passive recreation, but opportunities to engage the river and engage with the natural environment of the park. And then there's also the existing trails. So there's a network of existing soft surface trails that we propose to keep and potentially enhance with a maintenance plan. And then you can see we're still thinking about when that off-road bike track might come into play, and that's something that would have to be coordinated with the county and with the residents and with the local organizations to make that happen. You can see on the right, this is kind of the idea, and actually in the main picture, it's the idea for a more natural landscape aesthetic. Some wooden benches, some gravel areas, native plants, and then on the right, there's a good view of what a coquina parking lot might look like, tucked into the palm trees and the saw palmettos. And then you can see a nice soft surface natural trail winding through the natural landscape on the bottom right as well. So with that, next steps, the big thing for us is going to be working with the county to confirm the phase 1 scale and scope, and that would trigger us to start working on the phase 1 construction drawings with the intent that we would develop a full phase 1 that would match our construction budget. And so that's going to be the key component of working with the county and working with all the volunteer organizations to really nail down the phase 1 scope and put together a set of drawings in coordination with engineering that address some of the drainage issues, that address some of the significant environmental constraints, if you will, but also responds and respects the natural environment that we have out there at the Myakka River Park. And so with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike for some questions.
Mike's muted, I think.
Oh,
I'm not any longer. Thank you.
There you go.
So you do have the ability to ask questions in the live Q&A, and we will do our best to answer them as they come up. The first question is, how many parking places do we anticipate?
I can start with that. Sure. Right now, I don't believe we've drilled down that much detail yet on the exact number of parking spaces. However, Charlotte County does have in their land development regulations what would be required to support the type of amenities and uses that are found within the park, and base that and or the size of the park area to then correspond to the number of parking spaces. But we would certainly meet and or exceed within the requirements of the county's land development code.
Okay, thank you. The next question, approximately when would construction begin? So it's little complicated only because there's a number of different things that we're looking at. As was mentioned, the first phase of development is going to be based on what our available budget is. And right now we have approximately $800,000 over the next 2 years available, which unfortunately doesn't buy us a whole lot. However, we are hoping that through some grant applications, we'll be able to get a little bit farther in there, particularly with the trails. And probably the first things that will be developed are going to be the trails that will be able to be used locally by the residents in the neighborhood, just because those can be done somewhat in-house. And then once we start looking at some of the hard trails, paved trails, those are the ones that will take longer to come in. And right now, as part of this contract with RWA and Canaan, we do have some phase 1 construction documents. Again, we would need to go out to bid for any major construction, and that usually is anywhere from a 3 to 6 month process, maybe a little bit longer, courtesy of the pandemic. So I would say that within 12 months, you should see some kind of activity on the property, even if it is just the initial trails, natural trails going in. Let's see. Question is, will the Gulf Code Street and Drainage MSBU be paying for any of this? The answer to that is no, it will not. We will be paying for the addition to the road, will be coming out of the park budget. And that's why we're also including it as part of the park cost. Question, that area has been used in the past to stage the periodic dredging of the Gulf Cove canals. Has there been discussion about where that will be relocated? No, it has not. That's just something that we'll have to work out with Public Works. We have done that as a courtesy to them previously. We do this with them at a number of locations throughout the county where we have worked with them. Is it golf cart accessible? Currently, we do not allow motorized vehicles of any kind in the park system, so I would say no. What streets and where are entrances to the park plan? Can we show the master plan again? And
Yeah.
can maybe one of you all address that?
There we go. So the primary entrance is kind of where the existing entrance is currently, that is being used for some of those dredging purposes as of right now. To maintain and minimize park disturbance, we've kept it in this same location, which is also easily accessible from the surrounding streets. So really, this is the only main vehicular entrance here that would allow you access down to the river. We would add a parking lot in up here as part of future development to really address people coming in from this side of the road as well, and basically be able to capture them here or orient them down towards the other main entrance. We also have a slight turnaround area at the corner here to allow for anybody who's coming around this corner or makes a turn in this direction to be able to at least turn around and be able to find the main parking entrances. Then these two right here would just be smaller pedestrian scale entrances with signage that allow for people who are walking or biking to be able to easily access the park and the trail.
And thank you for that. Let's see. Another question with regard to how the county will pay for the road expansion, if it will be through the MSBU, and we answered that, no, it will be coming out of the park budget. Have we considered an alternative name? We already have 2 Myakka parks. This will increase confusion with different parties all agreed to meet at Myakka Park and end up completely different locations. The suggestion is to call it Gulf Cove River Park would be geographically accurate, unambiguous, and help property values. So we do have a park naming policy in place that usually goes through the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. There's a naming application. So obviously we could definitely rename the park. We have used this as a name for several years for identifying the parcel primarily, but the name of the park can be changed. Next question, how are you going to maintain the Gillette entrance and roadway? Honestly, that is part of the neighborhood planning portion, and since obviously Gillette is a significant roadway in the neighborhood, in the community, that's going to have to be something that Public Works will have to address. It will not be part of the park project, though. Are there any washroom facilities? So there are washroom facilities planned in future phases, and I'm unsure of what the code requirement is of when that is triggered. Maybe one of the designers can help with that.
So I don't know specifically per code when it's triggered, but I do know that there's some pretty significant elevation requirements that it'll be a pretty tricky bathroom facility, and maybe Ken, you could address the code requirement.
Right. Unfortunately, I don't know the code, but through prior hats I've worn is yes, it's based on the potential usage and the needs of the facilities that are there. So we would have to work through that in the design element part of it. And you're also correct, Greg, is it's going to be an interesting aspect of dealing with some of the, because we're in the flood zone and et cetera, of how we would have to design it. So, but I believe they are proposed in the future, though.
Yes, and I would also offer that what we have done at most of our environmental parks is they have portalet restrooms that are cleaned and maintained by contract, and we would obviously want to make sure that there is some kind of facility out there so people aren't doing their business out in the park. So generally we have located those close to where there would be a gathering area, a pavilion or a parking area, just to make it for close proximity. Initially, how many parking spaces will be put in? And we did try to address that initially. It's really going to be a matter of what's required by code. But I think it's safe to say that the initial one could have as many as 15, but don't hold us to it, because we'll have to look at it still and see what the existing conditions are going to allow us to do and what kind of footprint is available at the time.
That's correct, yes.
And are there any other questions? This is good feedback. We appreciate it. Okay. Well, I want to thank everyone for coming out. Is there anything else that you all wanted to mention?
I want to thank everyone for coming out as well, and just let everyone know that we can't wait to get back down there and help everybody bring this park to life.
Yes, and in closing, yes, thank you, Mike, the team, staff, everybody out there that's been participating up to this point. Greg and Lauren, great job once again, and I concur with Greg. It'd be great to be able to do this in person and really get our hands dirty and get this thing moving forward. So thank you once again.
Thank you, everyone. Again, since this was the first time that we have done this type of a virtual meeting, we do appreciate your participation, and we will be attempting to put this online. I believe that we do have the ability to publish it online so that it can be seen by others. And as soon as we have that set up, it will be set up on the county's park development pages, which is the same place you can find a copy of all the work that has been done up to this point and see the plan for yourself. And with that, we thank you very much for participating and hope you have a pleasant evening.
And Mike, I just saw a comment that said, how can we contact everybody?
Right.
Is there contact information that we can provide people?
Yes, thank you.
Lauren?
You can contact me through the county's email at mike.koenig, Koenig, at charlottecountyfl.gov. And we will forward any questions that we have that if we can't answer them, we'll ask the consultants for their assistance with that. Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate it and have a good evening.